Hello, everyone, and welcome to an all-new episode of Deep Cuts Live. I'm your host, Antoine Reed, and if you're watching for the first time, just hit that like or subscribe button, wherever platform you're watching or listening to this on. And today, we have a first-timer on the show, which is always nice to say after 5 seasons of doing this. So we've been doing this since the pandemic. So it's always nice to have someone new on the show. So we have Justo Eiroa on the show with us today. And I'm looking very forward to speaking to Justo because I've not spoken to you in person before, but I've heard nonstop about you. When I've told different retailers that you were going to be on the show today, they all had different little bits and questions for you. I was speaking to Teresa from Georgetown Tobacco about it, and someone from Benny's. So you're well known throughout the industry. So thank you for coming on to the show today.
Well, thank you, Antoine, especially for Deep Cuts. And I'm very happy to be here. So I really appreciate your time and allow me to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So what we usually do before we open up into the usual discussions is we have like an icebreaker question. So your icebreaker question, Justo, is if you could switch places with anyone for a day, who would you switch places with, and why would you choose to switch places with that person?
Switch places. There we go. I would say probably, in a way with my dad, because my dad is kind of the guy that, I follow his footsteps, and he's got so much knowledge that if I'm able to just be him for a day and acquire all the knowledge about growing tobacco, about aging tobacco, and, the way he makes blends. It's something that would save a lot of learning time. So just being in his shoes is something that will be very cool because, hopefully with that day, you'll be able to at least know a lot of things that, whatever he forgets is maybe, the knowledge that we have. So I think that would be something that would be very cool.
And I know your dad, figures in hugely to your story. So can you just tell people a little bit about your father? Because there may be some people who are new to you and to the JRE and the Aladino brands, but can you just tell people a little bit about your background, your father? How did you come to be part of the premium cigar industry?
Well, my father was actually a Cuban expat that left Cuba during the Cuban Revolution, before the Cuban Revolution. He's always been a farmer. I mean, his whole focus about our family is being farmers. When he was in Cuba, my grandfather used to be the superintendent for the Cuban Land Leaf Company. And the Cuban Land Leaf Company was a growing. It was a farming operation. It basically financed all tobacco growing in Cuba, and then the tobacco was then harvested. And then it was sold to the U.S. and market, to the factories in Tampa and also into Europe. So basically, what was going on? My father grew in that environment, as his father, my grandfather, was a supplier of raw materials and finance farming operations. So we also had a farming operation. Probably was not that big, and we also grew tobacco for the Cuban Land Leaf Company. And then that tobacco was harvested, and then, like I said, from all the different farmers, was graded, was selected, and then sold into the market to be made into cigars. And then my dad, being part of the revolution for Fidel at the beginning as a student, then later found out that Cuba became a communist state, and then he was part of the Bay of Pigs. And then from the Bay of Pigs, he went to the Korean War. He's also a U.S. Army veteran. And then the tobacco embargo came, and by the tobacco embargo coming, all those factories that were manufacturing cigars in Tampa and the rest of the U.S. could get tobacco. And then my father, having that experience as a young man, and growing up in farming operations, was taken by the Oliva tobacco brokers out of Tampa to select and actually go and sort a tobacco that was started in a pilot program in Honduras in 1961. So in 1962, after he finished his tour in the U.S. Army, he was taken by the Oliva family to sort the tobacco, and then he stayed in Honduras, becoming one of the most successful tobacco growers in the industry. So that's how more or less our family history comes. Grandfather from Spain became into the tobacco growing operations with the Cuban Land Leaf Company. Then my dad was for the revolution, then against the revolution, and ended up in Honduras as an alternative option for the U.S. market. Remember, back in the Tampa days, back in the 60s, Tampa was hand rolling over 500 million cigars a year, which is actually the size of the U.S. market today. So it was a very important manufacturing operation, and it depended all on Cuban tobacco. And when the embargo came, there was no tobacco. So alternatives had to open up.
I was looking at some of your other interviews that you've done over the past couple of years, and I know that with some of the cigars you make, you try to make them to be, I guess you would call Cuban-esque. Is that correct?
Yes. The way we blend is very much the style that the Cubans blend. Is, we like to give you cigars that anyone can smoke. We have our stronger cigars, but most Cuban cigars are mild to medium bodied. And I think the success of our story and the way we do Aladino line, they're all medium bodied cigars, but with tons of flavor, many cases full flavored. So a mild to medium smoker could smoke that cigar, but also somebody that likes, a bolder cigar can also enjoy that intensity of the flavor profile that we provide.
You were talking about how your dad basically kind of moved eventually to Honduras after everything that went down. Did he ever give you indication like why Honduras? Because I know that some people chose Dominican Republic, some people chose Nicaragua. So for him, why Honduras?
Well, people will ask why Nicaragua, why Dominican Republic, but Honduras was the person that started the pilot program was head of the Tobacco Institute of Cuba, and he grew up. My dad grew up with him, and he's the one that started the projects in Honduras. So he basically started working with him, and he was being advised by him to stay in Honduras. And then there was plenty of projects that were available because they were trying to develop alternative crops in Honduras. Honduras was known for a big banana export company. I mean, Honduras was, known for exporting large quantities of bananas, and they wanted to develop all the alternative crops to bring in added value to the farm operations. And that program was started. There were several farms going on. And then my father was able to tap into that opportunity and basically take over a lot of those tobacco projects that had already been started. So the opportunity was there in Honduras. It was probably a little bit more advanced than Nicaragua, even though Somoza provided land and opportunity and financing for many Cuban expats to come into Nicaragua and bring the tobacco culture into Nicaragua. But Honduras was the first one to start it in the 1960s, before Nicaragua. So it just happened to be an opportunity, and he stayed. I mean, I guess he was there, and he saw the opportunity, fell in love with the country, and started to move forward with his dream.
So for you, what was it like kind of growing up in Honduras?
Well, we grew up in farms. We had, electric generators. We, at night, our generators would run from 5 o'clock to around 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, and everything would turned off. So I grew up, riding horses. Very simple. Watching milking cows and learning how to milk cows. So I grew up in a farm environment, and with limited electricity. With very healthy, our pastime was, with a BB gun, shooting cans and running around and being in tractors and learning about farm equipment. So it was a very healthy young life.
It's funny because today, and I just had my 40th birthday last month, and so you think about how things have changed in between the generations, and I hear, and maybe this is the thing where, like, when you get older, you pick up on it a lot more. But like when I'm watching TV now, there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, I remember when I was growing up, I would spend time outside, and now people don't, kids don't spend time outside, and they, we read books. Now they don't read books. They listen to books, and they don't even watch TV anymore. They watch YouTube or or people playing video games and they don't understand. It's like, do you have any of those moments where you kind of look back at how you grew up versus how kids are growing up today, and you're like, wow, like if I had grown up in today's environment, I would have, went a completely different route than what I chose to go to.
Well, I still remember, my dad's favorite thing was watching the big 8-tracks. I don't know if you know what the 8-track is. And then you move from 8-tracks to cassettes. Then the big thing was CDs. And, then the iPods came in, and then that changed everything. Same thing with computers. To start up a computer, you needed a floppy disk.
Right.
So, it's so I've been through the whole thing. And I don't think I'm that old, but still, it's something that new generation won't know. And like I said, today, if you take a phone away from somebody, he might, that person might have a heart attack. So it's a different culture.
It definitely is. Were you one of these people who grew up knowing that you wanted to work in this tobacco industry in some way, or did you just kind of find your way in it after college and everything else?
Well, I went to ag school, and I grew up on the farm, so I always knew that I liked farming, and I also, while I was a farmer, I created the Grain Association of Honduras, and was very involved in agriculture policy. So I mean, it's part of my roots. So tobacco is the main thing, but we also grow a lot of crops that are like corn and milo that are rotation crops. And, I helped organize, the grain producers of Honduras. So I was always involved in that area. And then during the Camacho days, I was never the face of the company. I was always in the farming operation with my dad in the back end.
When it comes to growing tobacco, I don't think a lot of people even think about, what that's like how long does it take to grow a tobacco plant? What is your favorite part about the growing process, and what part do you find that you had to kind of learn a little bit more about to perfect or to get right?
Well, the tobacco plant is cousins, same family as the potatoes and the tomatoes. They're all solanaceous. And the life cycle of a plant is around 120 days. So you'll have 40 to 45 days in the greenhouses and another 80, 85 days outside in the field where the tobacco grows, and then the leaves start maturing and aging, and then you have to harvest the plant. So the tobacco plant is something that always talks to you. You need to know it when it needs water, when it requires less water, when you need to harvest it. And that is learned throughout experience. And then once the tobacco goes into the tobacco barns, then there's another process of drying between 45 to another 60 days where the tobacco turns from green to brown. And then after that tobacco is done there, then it goes into the process of pilones and aging. And that could be another 2 years. So, it's like working today and getting paid in 3 years. So, the tobacco crop is something that requires a lot of work, a lot of investment, and a lot of knowledge. And a lot of things could go wrong in all that process. I mean, this year we had too much rain, so we couldn't plant. So we lost a lot of our crops in the greenhouses, which is not that bad compared to other people that lost the crops that were already planted because, there was too much flood and their crops went bad. So we're always somehow relying on nature and you don't control all the operations. And so, there's always a big risk being a farmer. So it's one of those things that you need to learn and understand and how to work with it.
Yeah. And I don't think that a lot of people think about, you're at the mercy, like you said, of weather and weather patterns. And with everything that's going on with the environment today, it seems, like you said, a little bit of a big question mark, I guess, coming into each year is, are you going to face something like catastrophic, or are you going to have a good year? That must be a little bit nerve-wracking.
Oh, yes.
to wonder, like.
But you must need to love it a lot to be doing it. So.
Yeah. Now, your family's known for the Corojo. that tobacco and kind of bringing it on the scene. Can you tell us a little bit about Corojo and just what is it? What makes it different? What makes it special? Because I know that, like I said, a lot of beginning cigar smokers probably watch the show and they hear that term Corojo and it kind of just goes over their head. But if you were explaining it to someone who was kind of new to the hobby and the lifestyle.
So basically, Corojo is one of the different varieties that are grown. I mean, you have many varieties like San Andreas, which is normally a dark tobacco that you use for wrappers. You have Connecticut, which is a light wrapper, yellowish. But depending if you put in pilones, it could also be nice and brown. You have Cameroon, Sumatra. But Corojo is one of the original seeds from Cuba that gives you, it's not a very big plant. It's actually, compared to the new varieties, it's not very high yielding. And at the same time, it's very susceptible to blue mold. So it's got a double whammy. But the benefit of that tobacco is extremely flavorful. So if I was going to try a leaf, compare one leaf to another leaf, I would say, you could probably get, this is a guesstimate, 20, 30% more flavor intensity of a Corojo leaf or of something else. They're different flavor profiles. But the Corojo has got a natural sweetness and spice to it that is very appealing. And that's why in the industry, everybody uses the word loosely of Corojo, even though it might not be the same Corojo breed that we're growing. But Corojo now today, to be able to sell a tobacco or a cigar, we made Corojo to become a very important part of the cigar industry. And that's why kind of in the old days of Camacho became extremely known because of, the Camacho Corojo. And then everybody started coming out with, the different types of Corojo. And they didn't want to grow our crops. So there was crossbreeds of Corojo and Habano seeds, which gave better yields, a little bit more resistant to blue mold. But at the same time, it also changed the flavor profile, which that still gives us a competitive advantage, even though we have to sacrifice yield.
So does Corojo appear in all of your cigar lines, or is there a certain cigar line that you kind of push people towards and say, this is how you can experience Corojo?
Most of our cigar lines have a little bit of a component of Corojo. But you could see now, for example, the new Fumanoche line that we came out has no Corojo. A lot of them have fillers and binders, and we also have our true Puro Corojo, which is our regular line, and also our Reserva Corojo is also binder, filler, and wrapper, which is Corojo from the same plant. So there are true Puros there. But now, we also blend a lot with other tobaccos. So, Habano is also very important for us. We're using Sumatra wrappers too, or Cameroon wrappers. And actually now we're also coming out with I think it's probably the very unique and probably the first one in the industry to come out with a true 100% Cameroon filler, binder, and wrapper.
Do you have a favorite tobacco to work with, or that you always try to go, that you kind of gravitate towards?
It's like basically telling, hey, what is your favorite food or what's your favorite meal? It just depends what mood you're in. Sometimes, you like something light. Sometimes you like a little bit something heavier. For example, I like, I enjoy a lot of Habano. I also enjoy the Corojo. I also enjoy a lot of the Cameroon and Sumatra. It just depends the moods that we're in. And the time of the morning, I'll smoke much lighter. After lunch, I might smoke a little bit heavier. Maybe at night, if I have, drinks with friends, I might smoke even something heavier. So it just depends the time of day and the mood that you're in. And that's the great thing about smoking cigars, whether you could do it by yourself or you could do it with a friend, or it's a very social way to live life, and with cigars. You can do it with friends or as a personal enjoyment.
At what point did you decide to kind of launch JRE, your own company?
Well, we had basically a non-compete with Davidoff. So after they stopped purchasing our tobacco, that gave us an opportunity because we sold the brands. So we actually came out 7 years later and started with the Aladino brand, basically replicating what we'd done before, the path of success. But, being 7 years away from the business and starting a new brand, it's very hard. I mean, people will remember you, but, to do business with shops that you had not done business, in 7 years, a lot of people have changed over. A lot of new shops are different owners, but, it's developing a new brand is very tough. So, it's a process, but, the growth that we see now in Aladino is because, we have that same tobacco that made, the previous brand very successful, and that taste profile that we have known to be successful with, which is providing cigars that are very enjoyable and at the same time very easy to smoke and also very, price friendly to the consumers.
I was watching one of your other interviews and you were comparing creating the cigar portfolio and deciding how many cigars to release and stuff to like how Coca-Cola builds this portfolio. Like, it doesn't have like 1,000 different Coca-Colas. It has just a few, that it kind of focuses on. And I really like that comparison because, I mean, we're in an industry where there are some companies, it's like you get bombarded almost every month with so many new releases that you, as a consumer, you're overwhelmed because you're just like, there's no way you're going to try all those cigars. You have no idea where to start. It's the 16th cigar in that cigar line or with that name. You just don't have anywhere idea to start. So where did you kind of come up with this, marketing, branding thing to like, not go crazy with the portfolio, not go crazy and release, a dozen cigars or feel the pressure to keep up with some of the other players in the industry who release something every other month, if not every month?
Well, one of the things, I come also from the beverage industry, so I understand the beverage industry. And when I competed in the beverage industry, I competed with Coke and Pepsi because they were in the water bottle business. So they had Dasani and the other one had Aquafina. So one of the things I learned, if you look at their portfolios, human beings by nature are we consume we consume in habits. So if you were to look at everything that the perfect distribution network, first of all, I would say the most efficient in the world is fuel. You go to a gas station, there's always fuel. And then the second most efficient, I would say, is the beverage business, where there is soft drinks or where there is beer. And if you look at soft drinks and beer, probably 3 or 4 SKUs in Coca-Cola dominate, 3 or 4 SKUs in beer dominate. So it's kind of the same thing. If you look at the cigar industry, probably the most sold wrapper in the industry is Connecticut. The most sold SKUs is Robusto Toro Gordo. So you have to keep things simple that allows you to have control of what you're doing, and also a price, a sheet of products that fits in one page. They always tell you when you're going to interview for a job, you want a resume that, they could glance at in one page. You'll be able to hire it because everything's said there. If you have to go and look at a resume that's got 5 or 6 pages, they're not going to read the second or third page. So I think, we try to keep things simple, and sometimes it might be a disadvantage, and people are always asking for something new. But at the same time, I believe too that, I want to streamline my production and also have good quality by streamlining production and becoming a perfectionist in what you're doing.
Yeah, and I found like those companies like yours that focus on just a few brands, they have a bit more success in that they can connect with the consumer a little bit better because they aren't worried about trying to, like I said, balance a giant portfolio of products that basically they need them to sell in order to break even or make a profit. So I kind of like the idea of keeping it tight and small and a focus more than trying to compete and come out with a new Aladino every single month, which I can imagine.
Plus, it's too hard of the work. I don't have that creative of a mind. It might be one of my weaknesses. I haven't been able to do that.
So one of the questions that came from one of the retailers that I was speaking to that carry your products is they wanted to know do you grow all of your tobacco in Honduras? And if you don't, or if you do you have any interest in growing it in like some other country for whatever reason?
We have bought tobacco from Mexico, Ecuador, in different parts of the world. And, sometimes, other people grow different varieties better than we do. So we have to focus on what we do the best. So, us personally to have operations in a different country, I don't know, because I think it's a little bit challenging. You have to be in both places, and, distances and being able to spend the proper time to do things right. You require to focus. And, it's like, when a shop owner has 6 or 7 stores, he's going to have to divide that time in 6 or 7 stores, whether they're in the same city or different cities. It requires a lot of supervision. In a store, you could probably do that, with an inventory program, and you can see what comes in and goes out. But when you have a couple of different farms, you have to see what the weather is there. If it's raining there, it's not raining on the other farm. So, it's a little bit more challenging. So, by running our operations, it's completely challenging. At the same time, I would want to be before, we have our current operation, we have 3 or 4 more farms. And we let go of the other farms. We could concentrate and have way better yields and better quality of tobacco in one operation.
That same retailer wanted to know as well, do you ever experiment with how you grow tobacco? Like, I think you mentioned a couple minutes ago, like hydroponics and stuff like that. Do you, try to grow tobacco in a different way just in case, something happens and, you have a really bad year and there's lots of rain and you can't, grow outside or whatever? Do you try, is there a different way?
We play around very much so with the patterns of rain, the patterns of weather. And, we need to kind of look at what the year is coming up. If it's going to be a dry year, it's going to be a very wet year. So this year began extremely wet and then became extremely dry. So, we had both extremes. So it was a very challenging year. So that's one of the things that we do. We also play with distances of tobacco. Sometimes the tobacco, if you want it to be thinner, we put it, closer together. If you want it to be, less susceptible to mold, we open it up so there's more sunlight that comes in, and the ground dries faster. So, there are some things, simple things that you could do, with the density of how many plants we have per acre, that might be able to change a little bit of the outcome of what our final product is.
Are there any trends that you're seeing kind of emerge in the tobacco industry that you're kind of thinking about playing around with at some point within your company? I say that because I remember in the pandemic, a lot of people were talking about Lanceros. Like, not enough people make Lanceros. And now you see this year, it seems like every company's making a Lancero of some sort.
Well, you know what? I think we're the ones that started pushing the Lanceros. And right now, I think we have 5 blends of the Lancero. I think we got the Corojo. We have the Cameroon. We have the Classic. We have the Vintage. And we have the San Andres Maduro. And I would say we're close to 2,000 boxes a month in the different blends. So I would probably say that we're probably the dominant Lancero company in the industry. And, we fairly priced them, around $10.50, $11 a cigar. So, and our construction is pretty good. So we're very confident, and we're trying to bring the Lancero back. And for us to be able to be the leader in the Lancero, you have to be, it kind of shows off your manufacturing skills and also the quality of the tobacco. So we like doing Lanceros.
Yeah, because I've heard other people talking in the industry that, a Lancero is nice, but it's not the easiest cigar to make. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, it's always our experience, but we have probably the best teams in the industry, so we're very happy and very proud of
them. So this year, normally we would be preparing for like the industry trade show that will be happening in a couple of weeks in other years. Now we're switching to an earlier in the year format with PCA show happening in March and next year in April. So you've already introduced a couple new things this year that I know some retailers and consumers were interested in. So one of them was the Aladino Fuma Noche, which I think you just mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that cigar and what was the inspiration behind it? How did you kind of develop that blend?
Well, one of the things that we, since I only have in our Corojo Reserva our stronger cigars, there is a niche, and there is a lot of, probably the loudest people in the industry are the ones that, like the bold cigars, the strong cigars. So I needed to do something in that avenue. So what I basically did is, without using Corojo and using other blends of our tobaccos, I created a cigar that is just as powerful, but it's very sneaky on you. So it gives you a little bit of sweetness that comes with it, with some spice, and it really creeps up on you because you won't think it's so smooth and sweet tasting that you think this cigar is absolutely super enjoyable, but then it creeps up, and then all the guys that were bragging that they wanted a strong cigar says, "Oopsie, I got a buzz." So I kind of very proud of that cigar, and it's one of those blends that I feel extremely happy of developing. And so far, I think it's been a very successful cigar. And people that have purchased it, in PCA in March, you're seeing now second and third reorders. So that is, for us, is a very successful cigar. You could always sell one cigar once to a store, but to get the reorders and the following reorders is where you really see that that whatever you created is having consumer acceptance.
And like with a cigar like that, like when you set out to create, release something new at PCA or whatever trade show you're at, do you look at in terms of like what's the portfolio missing in terms of strength or price point, or like how do you choose? Like how did you with that one? I know you said
you always have to be looking at your portfolio and where do you have kind of like the holes, and also at the same time look at the opportunity that you have with the raw materials that you have to see what you're able to create that you don't have. And the price points, we always need to be very conscious because, people like to smoke cigars, but, it's like people like to drink. People will go into a bar and, drop themselves $200 or $300, drinking 6 or 7 shots. And I think it's a better way to spend your money on smoking cigars. You can smoke 3 or 4 cigars and might spend, half of that and spend more time enjoying the company of friends or by yourself. So you have to be always focused on being price conscious of what you're going to be doing.
You're seeing this large, flow of people in the industry right now focusing on price point, but you're seeing it like really expensive cigars. And I know full disclosure, I work for PCA. So we were having this discussion a couple months ago. Like, you're seeing all these companies come out with like I think the $20 one is like acceptable, but you're seeing like 40 or 50 or even a $60 cigar. Like when you're seeing these companies come out with expensive cigars, I mean, do you think do you feel compelled like to compete with them or do you kind of think that they're kind of missing the mark a little bit in terms of where the consumer is at today?
I think today we're going, there are always opportunities for people to do that, especially if they have a great marketing team and they're able to do that. And there are some companies that are extremely successful doing that. But, sometimes you see those cigars that start off at very expensive prices, and then you see them online for, pennies on the dollar, or, a tenth of the price or a third of the price. And, I know there is a market for those cigars, and I'm not going to criticize them because they're doing that. And we're slowly creeping up on more expensive cigars ourselves. For example, our new line is going to be a $22 cigar, but I think, we feel comfortable putting at that price. There are not that many cigar boxes out there. There's only a 12 count box. So there is a market to do that, especially when you come out with something really special like we're doing now. And I think, like I said, the person that needs to feel comfortable with that, I guess, is the brand owners and the manufacturers. And if they feel they have something special for their consumers, I think they should be able to try it. And if they're successful with that with that cigar, I mean, good for them. Uh, so, I don't want to comment whether they're right or they're wrong. You'll see the success as it goes on with the brands that are doing that. But everybody wants to slowly increase the prices, but you have to create something special.
Definitely. And another release that you've introduced at the PCA trade show was a Gordo size of the Aladino Maduro. So how did you choose the Gordo size?
I in the last 3 PCAs, I basically had no Gordos. So when I first came out, the only Gordo I had was the Gordo Corojo. But then everybody has to have the Gordo Connecticut. People go and golf with that. I needed to have the Gordo Cameroon. I needed to have the Gordo Maduro, because everybody says, hey, there's not enough Gordo Maduros out there, and people want, this cigar, and we were missing the boat. And I learned quickly, just because I like, smaller ring gauges does not mean that other people don't like larger gauges. And I've been learning. So I have to admit my lack of understanding of consumer behavior, especially with the 60s. 60s is like the regular, like I said, Robusto, Toro, Gordo, Toro leading the way, followed by the Gordos are the SKUs that sell. And that's something that I need to adjust and learn from the advice I get, and also from the retailers that provide us information and say, hey, we need this.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question to ask too. Is like, how do you get that feedback? Because I know we're all connected digitally these days, but I would imagine someone like you have like 10,000 things to do in a day, and getting feedback from people is probably on your list of things that you need to get done or would like to do, but it probably is a little bit difficult to do when you have so much other things calling for your attention.
Well, it's not necessarily. One of the things that you need to do, I think, as a manufacturer, you need to listen to the partner retailers. The partner retailers are very important, because these are the guys that actually talk to the consumer, and they'll understand what the consumer wants. They'll understand what sells in their store. At the same time, we also have farm trips where we bring retailers, and the retailers can actively participate in product development with us. And like I said, they have way more experience dealing with consumers than I do. So therefore, their opinion are extremely valuable, as the opinion of consumers. When I go there and say, hey, this is what I smoke, this is what my friends smoke, this is what my clubs do. So, you have to be extremely open-minded, but be very careful, because you don't want to listen to every single guy and get, that's when people start coming out with, new cigars every quarter, because, you want to do what everybody asks for. And then, you have to really focus on being, on keeping your plan on what you want to do.
Oh, I know you just mentioned retail partners, and I think the very most recent Aladino cigar I had was the cigar that you made for Squire Cigars 50th anniversary. I saw Kim at the trade show, and she just, we were talking about stuff, and she was like, oh, I have an appointment to go to. She said, but here, try this. And it was like one that I tried just a couple weekends ago, and it was like exceptionally good. And I was just like, wow. I was like, it was like one of those moments where, again, I guess, like, as you said, your retail partners kind of know you. So how did that collaboration come about? Because I know that's a weird one that maybe not all the viewers will be able to try that cigar, but I thought it was a really nice collaboration.
I think if whoever wants that, they need to call Squire Cigars in California, because I think she doesn't have that many boxes left. Mm-hmm. And if they want them, they better get them, because that's a really outstanding cigar. So basically, she did our second trip to the farm, and we're extremely close with them. We're really tight, kind of almost like family. And Kim and my dad started working on it, and they worked together for a day or so, or 2 days. They tried the different blends, and they actually came out with what she wanted, and actually was like one month. So they were both very happy. So it was a trip where basically she stayed a week over there, and they worked on the blend, and it was done for their store anniversary, and we're extremely happy and proud that everything worked out pretty well.
Yeah, like I said, it's a great cigar. So I was like, it's like one of those, like when you get to the end of it, you're like, Oh, I wish I had another one. So it was definitely a great collaboration. So I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that because and congratulate Squires for 50th anniversary because that's a pretty big deal in this
Oh,
industry.
absolutely. 50 years having a store, that's not too many people have done that.
Exactly. And I was scrolling on Instagram and Facebook a couple days ago, which is kind of my part of my job at PCA to keep up with things like that. But I saw you do a video for the Aladino Cameroon Reserva. So could you?
I'm horrible at videos.
Well, I know, but it caught my attention. And I watched you like open the package, and so I got to see like the whole process because usually people, they just like here's the cigar, try it. So what can you tell us about that release? Like, how did you develop that? And I know you mentioned a little bit about it a couple minutes ago, but I want to go in a little bit in depth about that release too, because I know it's
Well,
one
I
that's.
got to tell you, we started growing Cameroon since 2016. So sometime in 2017, I tried the tobacco, and we were going through all the pilones, and I tried a true puro, everything, filler binder wrapper. And I said, dude, this cigar is absolutely something out of this world. It's got a natural sweetness to it with spice that it's not, you can't get with other blends of tobaccos. So basically, it took us almost 7 years to develop this, and I think we're very excited. But it's like I said, the way we do it right. So there's not going to be a lot of quantity. So everything that has been shipped out, it's been allocated to stores. There are only maybe like 600 boxes out there. So hopefully they'll sell out really quickly, and then maybe sometime down the rest of the year we'll be able to come out with a smaller release to finish off the year. So that's kind of what we have planned. But I think whoever has the opportunity, it's good for them to try it because, like I said, it's something that nobody has experienced before, and it's very unique. And I got to tell you, that's for me, is one of my favorite cigars. What I smoke all the time, all day, mostly when I travel, is Cameroon wrapper. And now having a true pure of Cameroon, but I don't have that many cigars to smoke with the 100%.
Awesome. Where do you want to take your company from here, JRE? Because I know that Aladino seems to be like the big focus right now, but I know you have other brands as well. Do you have any desire to kind of figure out how to, get those brands as big as Aladino, or are you kind of happy with where things are?
Well, Tatiscan is our sweet tip cigar. We're the ones that created the sweet tip in the industry when we created Baccarat. So Tatiscan it sells extremely well, and it's growing, phenomenally every single year. We just rebranded Rancho. We have now one size in Rancho, two wrappers. We have a 52x6 Toro in Habano and a 52x6 Toro in Connecticut, and that sells at MSRP at $6. So I'm coming out with something that is going to be kind of like an inflation buster. So I'm trying to provide an alternative line of cigars for people that still enjoy cigars but don't want to pay that same amount of money for other cigars. And that's a fantastic, great cigar that we're making. So like I said, Tatiscan and Aladino, Tatiscan and Rancho, we're still focusing on, but our baby, our flagship line is Aladino still.
But what's the biggest challenge that you face in your business right now?
Well, one of the biggest challenges that we face, the U.S. market is a very large market, and every single state has got different taxation, and every single city is very far apart. So I think the biggest challenge that most people have is the ability to be able to see all your retailers, because it's very, very it's very tiring. When you spend easily 15, 20 weeks a year out on the road, sometimes you wake up in different hotels and you don't know which way to get up or what city you're in. So, it's very rough, but there's a lot of work and a lot of satisfaction because you get to really meet a lot of amazing people, not only at the stores, but, you become friends with a lot of them.
How many stores is your company in so far? I mean, are you kind
I
of
would
covered in
probably
every
say
state?
we cover almost every state. We're probably around 1,200, 1,300 stores. We still have a
Okay.
long way to go. Yeah, but
Yeah.
we're getting there.
Well, that's interesting because like, I know that there's some companies that want to be everywhere, and there's other companies that, as you said, they can only be so many places, and they don't want to grow to that point where obviously they can't keep up communications with their retail partners. So, do you ever get to that point where you have an idea where once you hit a certain amount of store partners that you kind of want to slow down and focus on them, or do you just want to
Well,
get as big as you can?
we still are, fairly small company. You can consider us still boutique, even though we have, the capability to become, a major player. Or still our volumes are very boutique-ish. So, we're still have a long way to go. I mean, I'm still sure that I could grow another 1,000 stores and double the amount of stores that I need to be in. But, it takes time as the brand grows. More retailers want the product, and that's kind of the advantages of when your product is being recommended by consumers. So the stores listen. So that's one of the things that hopefully will continue to happen.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, like, how are you growing? Because when I first came into the industry in 2010, I know print advertising was still the thing, and there was like a handful of magazines. You had to put that ad in there, or you weren't going to be taken seriously. And now here we are in 2024. I think we're in a completely different place, basically, where people are basically thinking that social media is where you need to be, but you're not getting the reach that you used to because algorithms and banned words and stuff like that. So, how are you growing? Like, how are you continuing to get consumers?
Honestly, the way you grow, you have to, you got to hit the pavement. You got to go and work. You got to go and do events. You got to do cutting lights. You have to meet and greet. So, there's no other word to put in the work. I mean, unfortunately, I would say today, probably, I don't see that many people, buying magazine or reading newspapers. I think those people are in trouble. So, printed advertising, I think, in no way, I think it does have value, but the value perceived what you probably get is probably not there to what social media and events do for you. You understand what I'm saying? I think you'll have more impact in going to a place and do event, in a week and do 3 or 4 events and have 100 people. So you get to meet 100 people, and those 100 people smoke 100 of your cigars or more, and then they will recommend that cigar to somebody else. So it's a lot of work that has to be done on the road.
Yeah, and I don't think people understand like how people driven this industry, the cigar industry, is. Like, you can send people an email, but to try to sell your product to them or whatever, but you really need to be there in person to have that face-to-face interaction with them, to hand them the product themselves, sometimes even sit down and enjoy the product with them and talk them through it. And it just takes a lot of, I don't think a lot of people are prepared for that kind of personal, just personal driven relationship that it takes to be successful in a premium cigar industry today. Like, they think is, you just make a cigar and you can send out an email and a press release and it's going to get snatched up.
It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, I wish it did.
At this part of the show, I usually like to ask 2 questions of our guests. The first of those questions is, do you have a philosophy that you live by or work by?
I kind of do. I always believe that it's God, family, work. You don't change those. So I'm a very faithful person. So for me, that's what I do. You do never interchange it. Always God, family, and work. So that's kind of my philosophy.
And I want you to finish this sentence. Justo Eiroa is
a farmer. So if you want to impress me, you talk to me about tractors. You talk to me about irrigation system. You talk to me about cows. You talk to me about combines and all that. That's for me. That's what I like.
One thing, since we have a few minutes left on this part of the interview, so do you operate your own factory?
Yes, we operate our own factory. Yes, we do.
So what is that like? Because I know that's a completely different. Farming is its own thing, cigar making is its own thing, and then what's the factory life like?
Well, factory life is you have to be extremely on top of it because first of all, you have to be completely checking on your on the manufacturing because sometimes manufacturers or people will evaluate your cigars by whether he's got a tight draw or burns well, it doesn't burn well. Also, you have to also basically look at the materials that you have, that you're able to keep the blends with the current tobacco that you have, and so factories can be very complicated. We have the advantage that we grow the tobacco and have the opportunity to have a little bit more control of our quality. But it can be very challenging if you don't have those advantages of being vertically integrated.
I think some people don't understand though that this is a handmade product. So there's someone actually using their hands, not a machine, to make a premium cigar. And sometimes they forget that. So I always tell people, like, if you get a cigar and it has a bad draw, it might just be that cigar. It's like, don't completely discount that cigar and say it can just be
it happens. How many times have you done like over easy eggs and want to bust all the time?
Exactly. So yeah, I always tell, I don't think, like I said, I don't think, maybe that's part of the industry that the media and the manufacturers need to kind of do a better job at showing just how handmade this product is, because I just think people don't. I know we live in a technology driven world, but premium cigars are special in that they are made by hand. So no two premium cigars are usually the same. So
yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much. You've been such a kind host. Really, really, really appreciated. Wonderful questions. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And for those people who are not watching this, who might be listening to the audio version of this, can you tell people what website and what Instagram they need to follow?
I think our website is www.jretobacco.com, and our Instagram is @Aladino Cigars. So you got that there pretty good. So you did a fantastic job, way better than I would see if you not read it.
Awesome. Well, Justo's going to remain with me for a few more minutes, and we're going to record a couple more things. But this is the end of the episode. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. And like I said, there'll be additional content on YouTube with Justo. And so thank you for watching. And if you're not having a great day,